Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to be honest, at the moment, I could make videos like all day long and I wouldn't even cover a tip of the iceberg of the news that's occurring at the moment because there's just so much happening. But before I get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to support the work that I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. I'd really like to get to 150,000 subs. I'm not far from it. Help make that a reality. In case, let's get straight onto the news. So the first news story is that a leading KZN figure has come under fire with 2 tenders from the National School Nutrition Program, which were awarded to his wives. Now, he's defended the procurement, stating his wives had been in business long before he assumed any office, insisting that there is no conflict of interest, and he dismissed public outrage as politically motivated, calling it a witch hunt. And I've got to be honest and say, see, this is a problem with the ANC. They really don't see anything wrong with involving family in, well, government business. And this ultimately is why we've had forms of state capture and all forms of looting of the state. Talking of looting of the state, the ANC held its National Executive Committee, its NEC meeting at the Germiston Civil Centre, a public facility. And as it turns out, the DA has accused the ANC of misusing state assets for party operations and suggested that actually the ANC's used a council building, a civic centre, for its own political party functions. And according to the DA, they're calling this a misuse of taxpayer resources. So yet again, we're seeing an example of the ANC potentially using the state like it's its own little piggy bank. More and more of the same every day. So moving then on to the next story, ActionSA has raised the alarm of the ANC MP who was previously alleged had been involved in forms of misconduct. Now that person is going to be heading the committee probing the claims made by the police officer in KZN against the police minister. Yes, the ANC MP is going to assess the claims against the ANC police minister, where it was alleged that there was forms of corruption that had gone on in order to basically make the state a mafia. Yeah, this is the ANC. The ANC is yet again attempting to judge itself and find itself not guilty. There's really no shame in these people whatsoever. Moving then on to the next news story, and this is that the SCOs, Transnet, Eskom, SA, are all in crisis, and yet again, over 400 million rand has been dispersed in executive salaries and bonuses. So all of them are currently in the shitter. And what can I say? We're just paying all the executive bonuses and salaries and telling them all how wonderful they are. So many of these payouts are persisting despite poor performance and ongoing operational failures. Yet again, we're seeing that nothing in the state is held to account. Even when the state-owned enterprises are failing, you'll still get a bonus. I mean, we loot all the cash, can't have any form of accountability, nothing works. Don't worry. We'll just pay people more money. That will fix it. I mean, ANC logic. Now on to some actual good news, and this is that South Khalifa has won a legal battle against BBBEE in aviation. And this is a landmark ruling in the Pretoria High Court, which declared that the Air Services Licensing Council, the ASLC, acted unlawfully by requiring BBBEE compliance for air services licensing. So this is the third wave BEE that South Khalifa is basically warning everybody about. So this is the licensing criteria being used in order to weaponize basically who can and cannot trade. In any case, the judgment mandated that licensing decisions must be based solely on operational criteria, safety, aircraft registration, and so forth, not race-based empowerment targets. Now, South Khalifa was granted its legal costs, and the court emphasized that BBBEE conditions exceeded the ASLC's statutory authority. Massive win against licensing criteria, using BEE in order to weaponize the state through the licensing criteria. Well done, South Khalifa. So moving then on to the press conference which occurred with Fikile Mbalula around the NEC's results. Now, for those of you who have read some of the news, you will know that Fikile Mbalula reiterated that South Africa will not bow to US demands or reverse its economic transformation agenda through external pressure. Fikile said, "We are not the DA," and he rejected any suggestion that South Africa abandon its BEE policy to appease international actors. Now, yet again, we're seeing the ANC basically saying that they don't care if the rest of South Africa is really damaged by potentially sanctions or trade tariffs. They will not reverse their economic transformation agenda. Like, these people really care very little about the citizens of the state. Now, Fikile accused the DA of selling out South Africa by lobbying the US to sanction certain ANC leaders. He claimed that the DA had weaponized international relations to undermine the ruling party. And to that, I would say, pretty sure that's what you did against the Nats. And you didn't see anything wrong with it then, but now you see something wrong with it as it's being applied against you. Now, during his entire speech, he suggested that the ANC would not yield its position even if sanctions harm the economy. Yet again, they care little for the citizens of the state. They only care for their own ideology and their own forms of self-enrichment. They do not care if you never get a job, ever. So according to Fikile Mbalula, the ANC affirmed its readiness to face potential sanctions from the US rather than compromise its core policies. And he emphasized South Africa's sovereignty and hinted at pivoting closer to BRICS partners to trade alternatives. But you see, this is the problem. We've covered this numerous times. The BRICS partners, many of them are export economies. They don't buy your crap. They export their crap to you. We've gone through this numerous times. You need an economy that buys. BRICS are not them. If you add all of the trade up with the BRICS nations all together, it still doesn't account for the trade to the US or the EU. Like, use your brain. I know it's hard for Kile, but try. In any case, he also went on to lambaste the so-called car guards that went off to the US as refugees. He talked about the 49 refugees, even though it's 59, and he suggested that these were all just car guards. Now, that actual allegation originally came from Julius Malema. So it seems that Fikile Mbalula probably reads Julius's press releases more than he does his own, because he reiterated the joke that Julius said. In any case, he called these individuals all car guards and then basically said that white people, when they got there, they all started killing each other. He reiterated some really fake news. He got stories completely wrong and said all white people just kill each other, and that's why they went over there, because even over there, they can't behave themselves and they kill each other. Which I must be honest and say is really, really freaking racist. And do you expect to see that on the front page in News 24 or Times Live? Well, no, because those bought and paid for newspapers just never do. Okay, so moving then on to the next news story. And this is that Lamola has supposedly held talks with a US advisor focusing on trade relations, rule of law cooperation, and regional security concerns. Now, according to the news, the meeting was seen as a strategic effort to ease the rising diplomatic friction between the two countries in order to be able to, get a trade deal of some variety. Although at this point in time, that's not really looking likely now, is it? Now, according to the trade tariffs, Trump's trade tariffs of 30% on South African imports will soon be kicking in. At the time of recording, it's the 7th, so actually they supposedly kick in today. Now, as you'll know, the global trade impact on these means that it's affecting countries such as the EU, Japan, South Korea, many of whom face tariffs between 15 and 41%, while India is set to see a 25% tariff set to double in the next 3 weeks. So what does this actually mean? Well, according to Donald Trump, he posted a Truth report that after midnight, Trump declared, it's midnight, billions of dollars in tariffs are now flowing into the United States. So according to Trump, he's seeing the tariffs as being a win. Now, for those of you who don't understand why he's seeing it a win, well, you will recall that one of the big issues that occurred in the US was the passing of the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, that Big Beautiful Bill meant that trillions were going to get spent on various funding applications. And to be frank, these are all basically being paid for by the tariff. So Trump, according to him, he needs these tariffs. These tariffs are going to fund his Big Beautiful Bill so that the deficit doesn't get bigger. So on to the final news stories. And this is the allegation that the US Department of Justice has uncovered a plot orchestrated by the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, to target President Donald Trump, allegedly in retribution for a 2020 drone strike against a general that was killed. Now, according to the report, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard orchestrated an operation with an asset based in Tehran to devise a plan to assassinate Donald Trump. Now, according to the report, the individuals were told that money's not an issue, and the operation was given a 7-day deadline in early October 2024 to present a plan. Upon failing to meet the deadline, the Revolutionary Guard reportedly paused the order until after the US elections, operating under the assumption that Trump would be easier to target if he lost. Now, according to a report by the National Security News, Iran's digital platforms represented by MTN Iran Cell, a major telecommunications provider in Iran, have become tools to amplify threats or propaganda aligned with state-backed violent plots. And according to the report, the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, and the Revolutionary Guard commanders have used the digital media, MTN, including state-controlled platforms, to issue graphic threats, animations, and imagery targeting Donald Trump and other US officials. Now, examples include a drone strike animation of a figure resembling Trump on a golf course, which was presented on the channel. Now, while the article does not provide direct evidence that MTN facilitated the assassination plot by a telecommunications infrastructure, it suggests that the state-controlled digital platforms like IranCell played a broader role in enabling Iran's orchestration and dissemination of violent state messaging. So as you can see, the MTN Iran cell is under greater scrutiny by the United States because of, the suggestion that it's been involved in communicating or broadcasting a threat to assassinate the president, Donald Trump. What will that mean for MTN in South Africa? Remains to be seen. So on to a very final news story. And this is the news story that economist Dawie Roodt has argued that South Africa's sluggish economy could grow by 3% or more within a year through some basically radical reforms. But I say basic because they really only revolve around a couple things, and that is the abolishment of BEE mandates, slash bureaucratic red tape, that's obviously in relation to the licensing, liberalized labor, and registration policies. That's registration of company policies, I might add. And he claimed that domestic and international investors are eager to engage with South Africa if the state stops strangling innovation. And I must say that I hear you, Dawie, but the ANC is not going to do any of that, because as we've covered numerously throughout this video, ANC doesn't care about South Africa. They care only about their own ideological bend, and they've been very clear that they will not dilute their racial equity and empowerment initiatives, if you want to call it that. Also, what the rest of us just call state looting. Anyway, these were just my opinions. Do let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like I said, a lot to cover today, and I've tried to cover as much as possible. Do let me know what you think. Until tomorrow, bye.